Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's One Piece TCG discussions coming at you with a Shanks guide today. We're going to do the same format as we did with Blackbeard. We're going to go over the profile, we're going to do a mini market watch, and then we're going to get into a matchup guide. The matchup guide is going to be a little bit more extensive, and I think Shanks has got a lot more to talk about than with Blackbeard. But with Blackbeard, to go in depth, I'd probably actually need matchup-wise probably about an hour and a half to 2 hours to go over thoroughly everything, and that's just with the guide itself. This one is a little bit more straightforward, so we're going to go a little bit more in depth and not just do surface level things like I did with Blackbeard. So hopefully you guys enjoy that content. Getting to the profile, we've got a cookie cutter list here. This is what I just normally play for cookie cutter Shanks. We have 5 life, mono red at that, 5,000 power leader. Once per turn, activate this effect when your opponent attacks. Reduce the character or leader by 1,000 for the turn. And then we have Otama, our 2k, 1/0 power character. On play, minus 2k to a card. Silver's Rayleigh SCR, no counter, 8 cost, 8,000 power. On play, give up to one of your opponents -3, another one -2, and then KO at 3 OS. Uda, Searcher, 1 cost, 2,000 power, 1,000 counter. On play, top 5 search for red hair. 10 cost Shanks, the big boogeyman of the deck, probably the best card in the deck. 10 cost, 12,000 power. All of your opponent's characters lose 1,000 power, and then he has Rush. Silver's Rayleigh blocker, got 5 cost, 6,000 power, 1,000 counter. On play, if your opponent has 2 characters with original cost of 5,000 power or more, draw 2 cards and discard 1 from your hand, so it's a queen. Then Beckman, one of the best cards in the deck for sure. 7 cost, 7,000 power, 1,000 counter. On play, trash a 6,000 power or less character. Pongo, 3 cost, 3,000 power, 2k. You can rest it to give one of your opponents -2,000 power. And then Lime Juice, 3 cost, 2,000 power, 2k. On play, up to one of your opponent's power of 4,000 or less, can activate blocker. Lucky Root, so blocker, 4 cost, 5,000 power, 1,000 counter. And on KO, if your leader's Red Hair Pirates, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with an original power of 6,000 or less. Goldie Roger, the infamous one, 10 cost, 13,000 power, has Rush, and then when your opponent activates blocker, when you or your opponent are at 0, you win the game. Edward Newgate, 7 cost, 8,000 power, no counter. On play, attach Arrested Dawn to a leader character, and then he can activate main to rest himself to KO a 5,000 power or less card. Ace, 5 cost, 6,000 power, 1,000 counter. If your leader's Whitebeard Pirates type, which we're not, he gains Rush. And then once per turn, if he would be removed, you can give him -2,000 power instead. Gunworm Red Hawk, 2 cost event, as counter for plus 4,000 and KOs a 4,000 or less powered character. Couple's really good against 5Ks with the leader effect. And then has a trigger to give a card -10,000 leader or character. And then we have a 1 cost event, guard point, counter plus 3,000. Trigger of the event is up to leader or character gains 1,000 power for the turn. Transitioning to our market watch. Let's start with the big boy, Dragon. So there's multiple variants of Shanks, and Shanks is a little bit complicated to talk about. There's multiple cards you can play, and this is one of them. Dragon is probably gonna set you back about $7.50, $8 a copy, so we're looking at 32 for the set right now, and this is for just the base SR. The card is okay at best to me. There's a lot of people who swear by this card. I think this card is mediocre at best. The reason why is Blackbeard, it's not as great because he's going to be turned off. You get the Rush, which is nice, which is really good against Blackbeard, but the issue is that if this is what you have to play at 9 Dawn, I guess it's better than nothing, but it's gonna get stunned, and then when they play Shanks, that's gonna get stunned, and then it gets weird. It feels like this card just doesn't do a whole lot. There's some people who believe that this is somehow better than the 10 cost Shanks. I don't see that at all. I think this card is way worse than 10 cost Shanks. I do see that the value in the Rush and the attached to Dawn, maybe a couple copies wouldn't be too bad. If you're looking at getting the parallel, regular alt art, it's gonna set you back about $30 a piece, so $120 for the set. And then it's about $70 base right now, $71 for the new SP that just came out. So we're looking at $280 for that. Kind of yikes. Portigas the Ace, looking about a $450 to $5 card. There are 2 schools of thought. There's Ace and then there's Marco. Reality is, to me, Ace is more valuable than Marco on 2 different fronts. Number 1, Marco's on play is basically not going to be active against Blackbeard in the late game, and it doesn't really hit a whole lot. Feels like you need to have Hongo or Building Stake to make Marco really good, right? The other issue with Marco is he doesn't have protection against bouncing, he doesn't have protection against bottom decking, and he doesn't have protection against trash. it doesn't seem to me like the card is really worth it, because even if you get the KO protection on the card, pitching an event from your hand is pretty bad. Furthermore, this card doesn't require me to quote unquote discard a card. It just has like its own on-field protection, which is super nice. So I prefer that over Marco, but it sets you about $4.50, $5 a copy. We'll look at Marco. So for the regular base, it's going to set you about $13, $14 a piece. So you're looking probably about 50 bucks for the set. Not a bad card. I would test this first before you buy it, because there's just definitely going to be times where it doesn't feel as good. Regular alt art is going to be about $35, $36. So it sets you about $120, $130 for the set of this. And then if you wanted to get before like super events, but the Japanese anniversary Marco ones, it'd be about $60 a piece, so $240 for the set. Next is Edward Newgate. This is another card that doesn't come in the set, obviously, so it's a card that we want to look at, especially with Shanks. This card is particularly like very useful against Doflamingo, especially, and to acquire right now it costs about $5.50, $6. I think this is a card definitely worth investing into. I like the control variant. I want basically like a Sakazuki deck, but it's like red and based off power. I think that would be like super sick. And this card is like Jack. It's very annoying every single turn to get rid of a card from Doflamingo. So if you're in a stable position against them and they don't have too many bodies on the board and this card can come down pretty safely, feels very good. Definitely worth the buy to me. This is not a bad price. It'd only set you back maybe about 20, 25 bucks to get the set. So I definitely invest in this card if you're looking at playing Shanks. Next, Otama. Ignoring this nonsense, there's several printings of her. She's fairly cheap right now. You can get an Otama reprint for Premium Booster for 15 cents. So if you need these, don't freak out. Jolly Roger is pretty nice. I do own a couple copies of these. Judge, if you want a little stamp there, that's not too bad. And then there's a full art that comes in Premium Booster that does look nice. Also in Premium Booster, they came out with this alt art. It's about $40 a piece. So it sets you back about $120 for the set, but I mean, it's super cute. She's like holding on to the tiger thing from Wano. And then I've got this Japanese first anniversary set for also roughly around $40, $39.50. Gonna set you back about $120, and she got a cute little apple on her head that's super adorable. Pick up your Otamas, especially if you're going to play Shanks. You can get a set for like 60 cents plus whatever it costs on shipping. Next, guard point. Every other guard point is like 10 cents. So this is like if you're going for the high rarity, there's a texture foil that came out in Premium Booster. This is a card that people are looking into. Everyone should have this card. It's very useful in certain variants of Shanks. Some builds have stepped away from Red Hawk and have put in like Bad Manners, Kid Course, Guard Point, and Rad Beam. And so there's just a lot of variants there with the counter. Just as a viable option for you guys. If we're looking at high rarity, it's going to be about $20 a piece here at this, and then it'd be about like 10 cents a piece for like the reprinted ones out of Premium Booster. Radical Beam's kind of like in the same boat. There's a Jolly Roger rare, there's a regular common, and then there's this alt art is very sick. It's about $20. Everything else is like cents. So we all know what Rad Beam does by now. Just an extra kind of card that you can play in the deck. Silver's Rayleigh. This is the one that's probably gonna like set somebody back like a lot. Man, this went up. I did another watch that was an hour ago, and this was down to $40, and now we're looking at like $47 for this. Silver's Rayleigh is a very strong card. There's no getting around it. This is probably one of the strongest cards in the game against Doflamingo, and you need it in Shanks. To me, Doflamingo's the best deck. It's the deck in the room that we have to account for and play around, and so I'm going to do that the best I can, and this card helps me do it. Unfortunately, it's looking like it's going to set you back $200 if you want your sets of this. And you unfortunately need 4. Overall, though, when it just comes to this card, it does too much in the deck to not have. You're looking at about 42 with 5 shipping. I mean, what are we looking at? 47. Yeah, we're looking at $47. It's about $47 a piece for the regular, and then about 55. I apologize. 55 for the alt art. Gum Red Hawk, another card. It's a rare from Romance Dawn. Looking $50 possibly, so maybe about $20 to $22 for the set. A lot of people are running this card. Some people are walking away from it. The reason they're walking away is this is good against Doflamingo, but if you play against a player that plays around the card, it can be kind of annoying. To Dawn, what it does, I think it's like relatively good, and it has more than one matchup in which it's strong. Like against black, for example. If they swing and they played a Brook to get rid of one of your cards, they swing, you have 2 Dawn up, you can KO the Brook with the Red Hawk. This sets black back quite a lot. This can also passively get rid of like Lafitte's, Laboon's on the board, reduce Laboon, get rid of it. There's lots of things that this card does that don't just apply to Doflamingo. This card can get value. It is very strong. I mean, as this rare from 01, it's about $5-6 right now. So if you're looking at play it, I would test on the sim. Definitely look at this card. If you don't have it, you have like Guard Points, Rad Beams, and Bad Manners Kick Horse. There's definitely successful variants of this deck that are not playing this card. So just a card to look at. Next is Shanks. This 10-12, looking at the regular SR from Wings of the Captain and OP06. We're looking at about $4 or $5 for the regular SR. This is a very powerful card. On KO, KO's a 10,000 power or less. This is good in a number of matchups. Specifically, if Enel becomes more popular, this is like one of the most backbreaking cards against Enel. Gets rid of Gecko Moria, gets rid of 10-cost Doflamingo, gets rid of Kid, gets rid of Zoro. There's lots of things that this card kills. And personally, it's like one of my favorite cards in the game. It just doesn't have Rush, so it's like not the greatest. This is the alternate art version of it. It's about $25, $26 a piece. So it'd be about $100, $102, $103 just to get your full set of these if you wanted them. It is a gorgeous card. This is easily one of my favorite alt arts in the entire game. People are going to play a copy or two of this for sure. Some of the upper ladder rank lists are playing this as well, and people are simps for rank lists. So they think that the 1 billion bounty players are like the trendsetters for the meta when Japan has not been on this card for a while, for a long time, for a very good reason, because it doesn't do anything to Blackbeard. But I mean, we'll see. Definitely something that's worth testing. And then moving on to our final card, I just want to talk about this Shiraya. Base Shiraya, if you want to pick up a set of this, it's going to be about $1.60 plus shipping. This card is impactful in several matchups that are very good. It's good against Blackbeard. It's good against BY Luffy. If you feel that like Shanks needs like an extra oomph, this card, it can be the card for you. Its alt art is around $7 per copy, so about $28 for the alt art set. This is incredibly low. I'm probably going to end up picking up my set of this very soon just to have on hand. Why is this good into Blackbeard? Because you can play 2 of them and a Lucky Roo at the same time, essentially like walling Blackbeard from being able to kill you while having bodies on the board that just like can swing at Blackbeard. Pretty much does it for the Market Watch. Let's go into the deck breakdown. We're going to start with Blackbeard. So this is going to be rather complicated, so stick with me for a bit through this. First thing is you need to take second. If you are forced to go first, you need to realize that you are probably going to lose. You just won't have the pressure set up on board. You can mitigate this by playing more rush cards. The closer you get to a rush variant of Shanks, the worse off it is against the Mirror and against Doflamingo. You can take that for what you will. If you think the room's going to be full of Blackbeard, play more rush cards like a Rush Zoro or Dragon, right? The second thing to note about this matchup is that there are several cards that are key for you and key for them. And there's several mistakes the Blackbeard player can make along the way that you need to know as a Shanks to capitalize immediately. An easy card to just like going down the list of cards. The first thing to note is this Van Augur. If you have the ability to get rid of this Van Augur, whether that be from a Ben Beckman trash if they let you do it, and this is not on the board already and able to be trashed by Ben Beckman, and or it's sideways and you can swing at it, you need to get rid of this card. There are 2 reasons. Even if the card is not using its reduction, it is a 6k base power card that will force a card out of your hand every turn that this is on the board. If you have to swing into this card after these are starting to get played, you are in a world of trouble. Because if this, and this is going to start swinging at you, and there's another one back behind it, the game's pretty much over. So getting rid of this card is actually a very, very big deal. You do not want this card to survive into the late game and transition into a guaranteed -1 from your hand every turn. The next is this card. Your opponent can mess up in 2 ways in the matchup, and if you see these, you need to capitalize on it immediately. The first is you are entering 7 Dawn or 8 and they have not used leader ability. If this card is at 6,000 power, you immediately Ben Beckman this if it's in your hand. The second, and probably most important thing, is if your opponent gets greedy and swings with the card. Jesus is a card that is a card you must patiently wait to swing with. If your opponent decides that they play this at 4, it's a 6K, I'm going to 6 Dawn, I'm going to stop them from using Ben Beckman next turn, so I can just swing with the card. It's a 6K, attach Dawn, swing 7, later swing 6, and then like play like Laboon active or something, right? Let's just say they do some hot nonsense like that. Your following response is to put all 7 Dawn and Dawn dump into this card and punish it immediately. You don't even need to play the Ben Beckman. You just need to kill the card. Because now what you force them to do on the subsequent turn from that, when they go into 8, is to play another one. And if they don't have it, and then they start playing this, and the only thing they have is Laboon behind it, this card becomes a lot less powerful. When it's protecting this card, it's a problem. When it's not protecting this card, it's pretty easy, and you can actually easily get rid of this card. If this card ever attacks you, it's as simple as your leader effect. They have to attach onto it, which means they're not playing 10 cost each. And furthermore, Lucky Roo can get rid of the card. They'd have to negate the Lucky Roo. There's several ways for you to passively get rid of this card. You can even, for example, do reduction Red Hawk and block out of like a leader swing or something. I mean, there's just so many things you can do to get rid of this card. This card is a completely different story. You have no removal that can get rid of this card in the matchup whatsoever. So if your opponent swings with it, you need to just Dawn dump into the card and get rid of it almost immediately. And the second scenario is, well, what if they have enough 2Ks in their hand to like protect the card? Well, if they have enough 2Ks to protect the card, they've almost essentially lost the game right there on the spot. They have to math that they can go teach with 1-2 into your 10-12 line. So what that means is that if they don't have another Burgess, what they need to do, they need to have a 2K counter and a 1K counter, because when you play 10-12 Shanks and swing into this card, they won't have the counter for it, guaranteed. But they have to block. The 2K is so that when they block with the Teach, they can just get over the 12 because he's down 1 because of the 10 cost Shanks. The 1K is to prevent the leader from taking damage. But they need more counter for the late game, because if they have to give this up to the Shanks or give this up, play another one, and then you play another 10 cost Shanks, and then you can swing into the Blackbeard, they're going to start running out of cards in hand because they have to keep pitching every turn to turn off your own plays. That's the thing. They either overinvest and lose in the late game, or this card dies and you punish them severely. Now, if at 8 Dawn they play 2 more of them, I throw my hands up and tell you that there's nothing you can do. If they play 2 more of this and then safely transition into 10 cost Teach, into 10 cost Teach, and these are like 8 or 9K swings coming at you every turn, any deck of the game is lost to that. The last is 10 cost Teach play. The most important card for you in the matchup rate is the 10 cost Shanks, because this card's effect, even if it gets negated by a Teach, as soon as they either stop playing Teach or you get more than one of these on the board, if you're safe and healthy, you will run these Teaches over and basically stop them from being able to win the game. The next win con is this. You get multiple cards like this on the board, and the Blackbeard player has to play around this card. And that's why I said the counter situation earlier. If they counter to save the Burgess and they don't have like a 2-1, and they're at 1 life and they're forced to go to 0, and you have Gold Roger in hand, if they're forced to go to 0 here, there's no way they're surviving Gold Roger. A Newgate can be pretty annoying as well, and can get rid of their Laboon, it can get rid of Lafitte, so on and so forth. Uda, even though it's a card that everybody cuts, you need to understand that this card is actually very strong against Blackbeard. It searches the best card in your deck. I mean, that should just be like enough for people right there, but I'll spell it out. If this card's on the board and they activate Lafitte or have a dot Q, and dot Q like KO'd something else like Lucky Roo or some garbage, this card gets to swing at those cards for free. But if they want to spend counter to protect their Lafitte, you'll just swing into it with leader and punish the play. And Blackbeard wants cards in his hand. They can't just counter and save the card early. And this is extra pressure against that card. Now let's say the Lafitte dies. Now your leader gets to just swing at them. And the lower life they get, the better it is. So overall, that's pretty much the game plan against Blackbeard. You need to take second from Blackbeard. And keep in mind that Blackbeard can win more times going first than you can, but you're still heavily favored. Bunny! Not a lot to talk about real quick. 10 cost Shanks is the best against this card, and it's a pretty important card. It's a pretty difficult matchup, to be honest. You're just gonna have to grind her out. That's just how it plays. BY Luffy, this can be pretty free if they're at 0 life and Gold Roger exists. These blockers don't mean anything. Your 10-12s are their worst nightmare on crack. Shanks is probably the one deck that like BY Luffy like runs into, and it just gets completely wide-eyed because once they get 1-10-12 and then they do it again and then they like Gold Roger, it's like your blockers just get cooked. They get cooked. It feels bad. This card's pretty valuable. Ben Beckman can just trash the card. They're at 0 life and they like have to play like 1 Sabo, 1 Luffy, and then Ben Beckman trashes the card and there's a 10-12 on the board. Swing 15 Shanks. Take every card out of their hand. But Shiraya also helps in this matchup a lot. Playing Raigo though, so be wary of this. Rob Lucci. This deck, first off, these two should switch. They should switch heavily. But this is something I need to say. I'm testing this right now because this is like super broken against Blackbeard. But this needs to be said, especially to the people in my community that think that this is not a good deck right now. You are definitely wrong. This is definitely a tier 1 leader. For sure. And this deck versus you is a coin flip. And the coin flip is, did Lucci see enough reduction? Because if he did, it doesn't matter what Shanks does. This is probably the one of 2 matchups in the meta where if they see what they need to see, it will never matter what you do with Shanks. It won't even matter that you had 10-12. It won't matter that you had like Rayleigh. Everything will just die. This card alone like can sack your entire deck. This is super annoying. Having a Tempest kick, they draw a card and then like Kaido make you pitch a card and then just like get rid of your 10-12 and make you discard a card on top of it is just super awful. Gecko is super annoying. They flood your whole board and kill your 10-12 with like Ice Age, Tempest kick, Leader swing into something else. And this deck just has so many ways. I've already done this in my guide, but there's so many ways for you to get rid of the 10-12. And if you can get rid of the 10-12, you can get rid of any single card in the deck. Lucci can literally just wipe you off the face of the earth the entire time, which is his goal. If they take second from you and then swing 6, play Brook, following that you play Ace and then they Hina, Brook, swing Brook, it's like, that sucks. Do not sleep on this leader. Do not sleep on this deck. Someone's gonna come with some variant that looks similar to this to a tournament. Maybe I'll do the dang thing and put this deck on the map and people are gonna wake up real quick. BY, this is a lot more powerful now and warrants play because of Blackbeard. First off, this can trash the Burgess and it can trash the Blackbeard. This card literally could tip the scales in making Lucci relevant. You have an answer to Blackbeard, and our answer to BY is this card. This is a very, very powerful deck. It's very strong against Doflamingo. Every matchup that I've tested so far, this deck is very, very good. As Shanks, I'm sorry. If they high roll with reduction, there's nothing you can do. You basically have to play your cards and pray that they run out of reduction. Because if they have it, you're not going to be able to do anything. That being said, if you have it, you just win because 10-12s and the highest card they have is a 9 that becomes an 8 and the counter swings are too much. Doflamingo, this is the second matchup that's just very difficult for Shanks. This deck sees exactly what it wants to see, which is Jinbei, basically lose. If they just see consecutive Jinbei over Jinbei over Jinbei. Mihawk is a card I'm testing because it's really strong against Newgate and it's really strong against the Ben Beckman. Just being able to get rid of the card while playing a 9 of my own and then like having like a 9k pressure card against them is just something I was testing. All that to say, I don't think it's the greatest, so if you copy this list, just beware, but like these two are like the most important cards as your bounce cards, and Grab Blade's really annoying. But when it comes to like the Shanks matchup, like the list that I showed you, Lucky Roo is very weak to both this, Jozu, and these cards at triggering out of life. The other thing that's very problematic, and the card just honestly, right, like if Bandai wanted to make a ban list, the game be healthy, this card needs to be banned, okay? Like it just needs to go. Doflamingo having this is one thing, but having this card is what makes the matchup feel truly impossible, because in certain ways, if they're firing on all cylinders, it doesn't matter that a lot of these cards are 5k. It's one Dawn and they're out of Red Hawk range, and to top it off, they can still swing at your leader. The other issue is that this card resetting your whole hand after like you take some damage because they just high rolled you is just ridiculous. If I had to ban any card in this deck, it would be this one. I think this card just completely needs to go. But as a Shanks player, what can you do? Well, you can do a lot. There's a lot of good cards. Some of them are like mediocre, but like a lot of them are great. Best cards are probably Newgate or Rayleigh. Rayleigh especially can just outright get rid of multiple bodies, and if Newgate was established before the Rayleigh play, like if you have like Newgate on your 8 Dawn turn, and then on 10 Dawn, instead of playing the 10 cost Shanks, you decide that you want to keep Red Hawk back and then play Rayleigh and then get rid of like 2 or 3 bodies just to clear the board and then have the Red Hawk, that's totally fine. You can do that. And then play the 10-12 after, and then now just get this litany of value. In the matchup against Doflamingo, instead of going at life, you just basically want to keep swinging at the cards that are rested that he brings in. Fortune Law can bounce them, and that's pretty annoying. Definitely do yourself a favor and Red Hawk the small cards off the board early on the 7k swing. This prevents the Doflamingo player from Law bouncing like Perona or Sengoku back to the hand, or Jozu bouncing it back to their hand and getting value out of the card later. Now they're forced to remove an attacker off the board, which is what you want. Another card that's very good at doing that is Newgate, or if you wanted to play them, Marcos. The Marcos would also be good in the Dofi matchup in that regard. Marco doesn't get any value against anything else in the deck without like Otama or Building Snake as like reduction. Additionally, we have to talk about the 10 cost Shanks because this card is a complete powerhouse. It makes this card significantly better on the subsequent turns after it's played, and is immediately death to a card on the board that's sideways. It's very strong. It also makes the Kaido very bad, like the 10 cost Kaido, because if they spend their entire turn playing a card to draw for, but they don't have a board, and then this is already on the board, you may actually be able to, if you have like a Building Snake or 2, and then this, you can maybe even kill the card, or you can do some other lines to like block her up, and then, you know, counter out and defend, or you can just Rayleigh reduce it, right? Or play another 10-12, right? Like there's so many things that you can do. The Kaido just has like far less impact. Kaido's bad anyway because of Blackbeard, but you know, some people still play it. And all that to say, if you can get to this card in a safe position with Shanks at 3 or 4 life, you're gonna be sitting pretty. But the issue is Jinbei can basically force the issue, and you can't really do anything about it. Lucky Roo is good if they don't see the Law or the Jozu. Or grab Blade or trigger something else to get rid of it. This might be a card to cut. If you're worried about the Doflamingo matchup, it might be a card to cut, and you might play like Marco or something else. So, and now we just need to talk about it real quick. You kind of work this deck, especially if you play the 10-12 Shanks that KOs at 10 or less. Everything in this deck dies to that, and this deck can't survive 10-12 swings. It can Raigo the Shanks, and it's like, okay, well, you didn't heal for the turn, so here's a 10-12 rush, like, plus whatever else is on the board. Lucky Roo is strong because every card, like Gadatsu, Lucky Roo is like a funny interaction, like, I KO'd you, but you KO'd me, like, ha ha ha. This may become a thing because there's actual answers to Blackbeard now, and that's like a Maru and Lucci. We'll probably see this pop up. Moving on, Purple Luffy. So this is a very difficult matchup. It's not easy if they see the right line. Purple Luffy's win condition is an early double set of this, or a line where you can't get rid of the card played off of this into this card. And if they see 2 of this, dropping a 4-6 or the Sanji, and they see this the following turn, you've lost the game. You can't win. Playing this both going first or second, it's far worse if they take second from you. Okay, so going first, if they take a life, they swing. You're just going to leader reduce. That's fine. They play the 4-6. If your response to that is not Lucky Roo, which many of the decks, it won't be, right? This 4-6 is going to get to swing at you for free, and they're going to take a life, swing 5, you're going to reduce that. Now they play 7-5-6. And this is why, like, Lucky Roo is like the only saving grace in the early game to this situation. Now you're left in a conundrum. Do you swing at this or do you swing at their life? If you pressure life here going into 6 Dawn, you're then going to have to deal with the fact that no matter what you play, Rayleigh, Ace, Marco, none of it does anything to their board. Lucky Roo would be still the best card by that point in the game in this position. And then the turn following that, they swing 6, draw a card, they swing 8, and then they play another one, attach Dawn, swing 6. What do you do? What can you do? You're going into 8 Dawn. Rayleigh isn't saving anything in this situation. Your only prayer is that they don't have counter, which for the record that they will, and then you could just like maybe get them to 1 or 0. Your Marco certainly isn't doing anything. They've just drawn an extra card, and this card is going to start becoming a factor, and they're going to be unkillable. And then this card comes down after that, even if you get rid of like the Zoro, this card comes down in its place, and then it's just completely over. Then you also have to play around this card. around, right? And this is all going first. This is your second curve, and they're going first, right? They're gonna have like 10, 15 cards in hand. This Trafalgar Law is just gonna sit there menacingly, and they're gonna keep blockering up and rip multiple cards. If this card hits like 10 cost Shanks, this deck doesn't have an answer for 10 cost Shanks, but if you don't have the card, then this deck just runs you over. And then if they get to 0 and they're playing my version and they're playing this card, you're good. All that to say, the win con is this. They can still win by going 4, 7, take a life, go into 9. If they don't see this, the only games that they, like Shanks just auto wins pretty handily is they play Lucky Roo, and the purple if he doesn't see this. Other than that, there isn't really a whole lot that you can do. When you stop and think about it, like if you're also going the aggro strat, like you're not playing anything and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna like swing 9, swing 11, and they like take 2 damage. They have to take 2 life, right? They're gonna have like 12 cards in their hand, and this card's gonna like literally start getting them a lot of value, and you don't have a board. And by the time they've played the second one of this, you can't win by just trying to aggro them out, because you're gonna have to start countering out of your hand. They're continuously drawing cards, and they're gonna have like 3 or 4 Gum Giants for your like 1 lethal swing of 15 or whatever it is, and it's not even gonna do anything, and then they're gonna kill you on the clap. So it's bad. Not to mention, they can also play blockers. The best line against Purple Luffy is to hopefully just get to 10 cost Shanks, because they can't do anything about the card. Like literally, like there's not a single card in this deck that doesn't have to like dawn dump into the card, and it's already losing 1,000 power, right? And then that's on top of your leader effect and the whatever counter or whatever else. But you need to control their board as much as possible, and I hate to say this for all the people who hate Doflamingo, but this is literally the strongest card in the deck, like in the early game against Purple Luffy. If you sit down against Purple Luffy and you're like, why can I not beat this deck? It's because you're not playing this card. Kind of like a lose situation. Like Dofi's going to be the most represented deck in the room, but Lucky Roo is terrible in that matchup. But Purple Luffy is also a very popular deck, and this card is very good in the matchup. So bear that in mind. You know, keep your composure. Try to get to this card. Try to get to this card. If they get to 0, this is going to win past the blockers. So last but certainly not least, just the mirror. Right, so how do you beat the mirror? You take second from them, and then you play 10-12. Much like the Purple Luffy matchup, person who goes second, right, you're taking your curve away from the Shanks player, just like Purple Luffy would take the curve away from you to not get to this card. A player who sees more than one of this card in the game in a healthy life state, and the other player doesn't even have one or only has one, and there's like multiples of these coming down, like it's this, then another one, and then like a Rayleigh. Even if it's like a Rayleigh follow-up from that, or a Roger, or a third, that game is over, right? The person who doesn't have 3 of these just loses. How do you play the early game? You just play the same game. You're mirroring each other. This card can be okay. I see a lot of people who just want to play down Hongo, and they're like, yeah, dude, I'm gonna like get rid of my 2K, and I'm like, sure, you get rid of your 2K, bub. It doesn't really do anything, because I can just trash it with Ben Beckman. It can die to Red Hawk. It can get KO'd by Lucky Roo. It dies to like Rayleigh. There isn't a whole lot this thing can do. And then not to mention with Marco like being present, this card getting played to the board just gets clapped in the mirror. All that to say, it's like good luck, go second, and see lots of this. So that pretty much does it for this one, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed my Shanks guide here. I guess the last thing I'll comment on is like Dragon in this. There could be some spots for Dragon, like maybe 1 less Rayleigh and 1 less Uda or something, I don't know. But the thing is that like you're going to be adding more bricks. Just be careful with that. Rush variants are just a little bit too lopsided in matchups where you need it. Good luck to you guys. I hope you enjoy this, and thank you so much for watching. As always, this is Marcus from TCG Discussion signing off. Later.